Genius and self-belief are qualities often misconstrued as arrogance or even hubris, but in Rayan Cherki's case, his confidence is entirely justified. He is objectively one of the most creative players in the world, and while no one can truly replace Kevin De Bruyne directly, Cherki has the ability to help fill the creative void he leaves behind. You've no doubt been impressed by Cherki's brief cameos in a Manchester City shirt so far. I'm here to tell you, those performances barely scratch the surface. By the end of this video, you will truly understand the artistic monster City have signed. There's only one place to begin with Cherki, and that's his creative passing. Assists, expected assists, key passes, passes into the box, progressive passes, through balls, shot and goal creating actions via an open play pass. The top 1% across Europe's top 5 leagues. The technical term for numbers like that is mental. No one betted him for expected assists or shot assists in Liga last season. He generated over 3.5 expected assists for Lacazette alone, who only managed 3 goals from all those chances. Partner him with a slightly better goal-scoring striker, someone like, Erling Haaland, you're potentially looking at record-breaking numbers. He's an imperious passing creator, yet lacks a trademark method. That's how varied and unpredictable his work is in the final third. Reverse through balls from the right wing, no problem. Intricate flicks and intelligent touches in central congested zones, light work. Dynamic line-breaking passes to release runners regardless of angle, it's second nature. Set-piece delivery, name a form of chance-creating pass and odds are Cherki's already mastered it, all by the age of 21. This graph from last season perfectly illustrates the standard of Cherki's forward pass volume and chance creation. The x-axis is expected assists per 90, and the y-axis is forward passes completed per 90. I've included some select players from the top 5 European leagues the City have either been linked with in the past or have a reputation as being high-volume passing creators for the sake of comparison. Essentially, if you're towards the top right of this graph, you're one of the best forward and creative passers in Europe. There are 2 players who occupy that top right zone. One, of course, is Kevin De Bruyne, and the other is Cherki. Hopefully that puts into perspective how elite Cherki is as a forward-thinking creator. Watch his passing for long enough and you'll notice how rarely attackers have to break their stride or adjust their run. The weight, the timing, the execution, it's all inch perfect. And his awareness of his teammates' movement is borderline telepathic, the kind of alien understanding you just can't teach. Despite what many think, Guardiola has always maintained that in the final third, it's up to the players. He gives them that freedom, asks them to problem solve, to find the gaps and break down the block. And there's no better fit for that philosophy than Cherki. After all, he's often spoke about how he plays with joy, freedom, almost like a street footballer. That shows. He thrives in tight spaces, bouncing off teammates, linking up with others on his technical wavelength, and constantly finds creative, unpredictable ways to unlock a defense. I'd predict City's other small space experts to thrive with Cherki in the side. Now, while his most dangerous work does come closer to goal, Cherki is more than capable of picking the ball up from deep and pinging long-range passes. His first instinct in these areas is usually to try and switch the play or pick out a runner. I don't dislike that side of his game by any means, but when I was watching him at Lyon, I don't know, it often didn't lead to much and sometimes felt a bit forced. Like he was trying to take control from deep, almost for the sake of it. But maybe that's understandable. At Lyon, Cherki was the attack. He probably felt like he had to be at the heart of everything. I'm not saying he shouldn't ever drop really deep or that his distance passing is poor, because it clearly isn't, and I love how he's brave enough to take that responsibility on. But at City, for the most part, I'd rather he left that to the likes of Rodri and Reinders so he can focus on hurting the opponent closer to goal. Cherki also possesses one of the rarest and most sought-after traits in football: true both-footedness. Take his debut goal for France, a ridiculous first touch with his right foot, followed by a gorgeous volleyed finish with his left. I presumed he was naturally right-footed because that's the foot he uses for penalties and indeed all his set pieces. But look at this shot map from the past year. More than half have been taken with his left foot. And this goes a long way to explain why Cherki is one of the most dangerous creators in Europe. You can't show him onto a weaker side because it doesn't exist. It becomes impossible for opposition defenders to predict where and when a final ball is coming from. That gives Cherki an incredibly unfair advantage against teams that set up defensively. He's the perfect creative locksmith, the scourge of low blocks, and is a master at generating threat from outside an opponent's block. And I haven't even covered his carrying ability yet. His first touch is a joy. Being able to dribble either way on either side equally as well in tight spaces makes his dribbling as unpredictable as his passing. And when those attributes are combined, you're left with an offensive magnet. It's remarkable how often you'll see opposition teams overloading onto Cherki because they simply can't risk leaving him isolated 1v1. By definition, that creates space and opportunities for others. Cherki is so gifted in those tight spaces that he can single-handedly deal with their pressing threat, and then take advantage of the space he's created for his teammates via that outrageous passing ability. Take this goal against Montpellier. Look at how many defenders are drawn towards Cherki. 4 players trying to box him in out wide. They're so focused on stopping him that they completely lose sight of what's behind them. His teammate realizes this, spots and ghosts into the space created by Cherki's gravity, and of course, Cherki finds him. Or this one, against PSG. It's almost comical how many players get dragged towards him. Once again, Cherki doesn't panic, and once again, the vision and final ball is perfect. That press resistance, that strong frame, his ability to use his body to shield the ball, it all makes Cherki a serious threat inside an opponent's defensive block, not just outside it. There's been plenty of debate about where he's best positioned, between the lines or out wide. But honestly, I think that's the wrong question. The answer isn't one or the other. It's both. Give Cherki the freedom to pop up wherever he wants and let him terrorize defenses from any position. And this is exactly what attackers dream of. City have needed more elite passers for a while now. Players who can consistently find Haaland's runs or trigger those late bursts into the box, because a teammate's behaviour changes massively depending on who's on the ball. My favourite example of this is the Newcastle game in the 2024 season. Kovacic gets the ball, no one runs. De Bruyne gets the ball, Bob immediately darts in behind because he knows full well De Bruyne not only sees him, but has the ability to find him. It will be the same with Cherki. Expect City players next season to not only get found more often, but to make more of those runs in the first place, because now they know it's not a wasted effort. So, we're obviously talking about one of the most elite creators in Europe here. He's more than capable of creating goals for others, but how is he when it comes to scoring goals himself? Cherki scored 12 goals for Lyon last season. Obviously very impressive, but if you look at his goal scoring stats across his career, you may reasonably conclude he's not much of a goal scorer. Even factoring in that high goal tally last season, he's only averaged 5 goals a season since 2020. But I'm pretty sure this is simply more about shot volume than ability. He's quietly developed into a pretty efficient finisher. And let's not forget, he's still only 21. With time and more importantly more shots, which he'll definitely get at City, I wouldn't be surprised if Cherki hits double digits for every single season going forward. His confidence levels are also increasing, which is essential to thrive as a creator at this level. Talent alone isn't enough. You need that belief to keep trying, even when the pass doesn't come off. And Cherki absolutely has that in abundance. His riskier passes or efforts won't always work, but that's part and parcel of being tasked with creating something out of nothing. He possesses that mental resilience to keep going, and the awareness to take those risks in the right moments. He knows how good he is so sure here, for example, that he's going to execute his actions perfectly, yet understands those limits and takes those risks only within the appropriate boundaries. Cherki is a game state Swiss army knife. I've already covered how he can hurt teams who set up defensively, but on the counter-attack, Cherki's just as dangerous. Now, he's not going to eat up space and drive with the ball in transition like Yaya Toure or De Bruyne. He doesn't have that level of running power, but he does have the athleticism to engage in short, explosive accelerations that allow him to drive into space, even if it's not something he can sustain for 90 minutes. Regardless, Cherki doesn't need to be able to carry the ball from his own box to the other. All he needs is that short burst before unleashing the runners in front of him with that deadly passing range and unreal vision. And I say bursts because Cherki is quick, deceptively so. Not supreme levels of pace, obviously, but his acceleration has gone under the radar. It's not only incredibly useful for counterattacks, it's key to his dribbling style. If a defender gets too tight, Cherki uses his smart and quick footwork to create the initial separation before deploying a burst of pace to extend it, allowing Cherki to get away and into a threatening position. The critiques regarding his physicality, athleticism, for the most part, I don't agree. But on that note, let's address the elephant in the room: the accusations of a poor attitude and the reputation as a lazy presser. Now, I couldn't find any credible source to support the claim that Cherki is a troublemaker or has disciplinary issues off the pitch. So as far as I'm concerned, that's just speculation without substance. However, there is some truth to the criticism of his pressing, and perhaps that's where the bad attitude myth stemmed from. Because Cherki isn't what you'd call an especially intense presser, not in the same way someone like Marmoush, Foden, or Savio is. He can be intense in bursts, but he hasn't consistently demonstrated that across full matches for Lyon. In fact, while researching this video, I came across two articles that paint a potentially worrying picture. The first is from October 2023 and reports on a press conference given by then Lyon manager Fabio Grosso. Asked why Cherki hadn't featured much since his arrival as manager, Grosso began positively and remarked that God has given Cherki incredible qualities. But what followed was interesting, to say the least.
C'est un joueur, c'est pas un joueur à part. C'est un joueur comme les autres, avec plus de qualités des autres, certaines qualités, parce que des autres, peut-être, il n'y a pas que des qualités techniques, il y a des qualités mentales, il y a des qualités athlétiques, donc chacun il a ses qualités. Lui, il a des énormes qualités techniques et il doit améliorer les autres.
Just over a year later, and another Lyon manager, Pierre Sarge, echoed similar concerns. Following a 3-1 defeat to PSG, a game in which Cherki was Lyon's only true offensive threat, Sarge was asked why he subbed him off. His response? He was contributing a lot offensively, but was starting to only make efforts in one direction, which was becoming dangerous for the team. We had to maintain balance when we didn't have the ball. That's two separate Lyon managers, a year apart, both directly criticising Cherki's off-ball work rate. These weren't vague hints either, they were very clear. This begs the question, given how much value Pep Guardiola places on pressing, counter-pressing, and collective responsibility out of possession, is there a place for someone like Cherki in a Guardiola system? Well, to answer that, we need to add some important context. Lyon has been in a state of near constant turmoil behind the scenes for the past few years, and that instability has been reflected in managerial upheaval. Grosso, for example, lasted fewer than 10 games before he was sacked. How much weight does that opinion of a teenage Cherki really carry? Even if the criticism was valid at the time, players grow. Cherki's had years to mature. Then there's Sarge's take. I've watched that PSG game in full, and in my opinion, his assessment was unreasonably hyperbolic and largely shaped by the way he used Cherki. To put it into perspective, Cherki often played as a right winger in a front three out of possession for Lyon, which allowed him to press in short bursts, limited his pressing burden, and preserved his energy. That role suited his pressing profile. But against PSG, for reasons only Sarge can answer, Lyon lined up in a 4-1-4-1 with Cherki stuck out on the left side of midfield, seemingly tasked with the defensive responsibility of tracking Hakimi of all players. What exactly was Sarge expecting? Cherki is not, and has never been, a defensive workhorse. You could argue he should have done more to prevent PSG's third goal, fair enough. But to suggest he lacked effort or defensive commitment is disingenuous. The position and role was simply unsuitable. Cherki's best off-ball position is at right wing, not as a wide midfielder where he's expected to shoulder a constant pressing and running burden, nor as someone to lead the press. That's what my eyes tell me, but it's also reflected in his pressing data. He created 2 goals for Lyon last season due to his pressing, both of which came from the right wing. And here's the key distinction. Cherki is not a bad presser. There's a difference between being an intense presser and being a good one. He's an intelligent presser. He knows when to close play, when to pounce at speed, and how to angle and curve his runs to cut off passing lanes. He's more than competent out of possession, provided he's played in a position and given a role that he understands and is used to. So no, I don't buy the idea that he's a defensive liability, so long as he's used correctly. And even if his pressing was an issue as of now, this may become a moot point throughout his City career. We've seen Guardiola turn lazy players like Aguero and Mahrez into fantastic workers off-ball. Cherki could absolutely follow that same path. In fact, we've already seen signs of it at the Club World Cup, where Cherki has clearly demonstrated bursts of intensity and a willingness to press. With all that in mind, where should Cherki play for City? For me, it's non-negotiable. Cherki must operate centrally when City are in possession. He needs the freedom to roam, to take up positions between the lines, sometimes to drift out wide, but especially to drift into the right half spaces, the zone De Bruyne once made his own. You simply don't create goals like this from these areas on a consistent basis if you're shackled to the touchline. His two-footedness, goal threat, creative quality, and ability to excel both inside and outside of an opponent's block is too valuable to be wasted as a traditional wide player. Not that he can't excel as an out-and-out winger, he clearly can, and has done so, but if you're trying to maximise his talent, you need him affecting the game from the middle.
But Nobbins, you silly little twat, haven't you just spent the past few minutes outlining that Cherki needs to be protected off ball, that his defensive duties need to be tailored to his strengths and weaknesses? Why the hell are you sticking him in the middle of the pitch?
First of all, rude. Second of all, yes, absolutely. City have primarily pressed in a 4-4-2 over the past few seasons, and as discussed earlier, given the player Cherki is right now, I wouldn't want to see him as a wide midfielder, nor would I be comfortable with the idea of a pressing duo of Haaland and Cherki due to collective intensity concerns. Nor do I particularly want Cherki to be pressing anywhere in the centre of the pitch. A solution lies in the principles of the recent games against Juventus and Bournemouth, a false winger system and a 4-3-3. Cherki can start nominally as the right winger out of possession before drifting inside in possession, with the right back pushing high and wide to maintain width. That role, a narrow right-sided playmaker, suits his pressing profile and maximises his offensive skill set. It protects him without hiding him and empowers him without burdening him. Based on precedent, skill set, and tactical familiarity, these are his best off-ball and on-ball positions, and based on the genuinely exciting performances against Bournemouth and Juventus. This doesn't just suit Cherki, it might suit City as a whole. If you're interested in what I'd consider our strongest starting 11 to be based on current personnel, this is what I'd go with. But ultimately, as long as Cherki is being given access to his preferred zones in a balanced system, City will always create a lot of chances and should score a lot of goals, regardless of personnel. And that is Rayan Cherki, an old-school, creative maverick from a bygone age, a flawed genius who is absolutely worth accommodating for defensively, a footballer whose artistry is boundless and impact incalculable, arguably Europe's finest passer, certainly its most gifted, and he's only 21. City haven't signed a prospect, they've signed a mercurial talent, and I promise you, the best is yet to come. Thank you for watching, turn your notifications on so you don't miss the INSTA analysis video, and shout out to my hardcore ultra channel members, Tony, Spartacus, Silver Splits the Blue, Ethan Larios, and Austin King.